All right, cool. So what I got now, I will kick it off with Coach of the Year in the Big Ten. So you went Painter. All right. There's so many coaches to think about in the Big Ten, and so many cool coaches that actually have succeeded in the past. Obviously, you got Izzo. You got Chris Holtmann at Ohio State. He's done well at Butler. Greg Gard, silent assassin, as John Rothstein would like to say. Greg Gard, it's going to be interesting to see what he does with Wisconsin. Newcomer. But is he really a newcomer? Juwan Howard. He's new to the coaching ranks, but obviously he's a legend at Michigan. Matt Painter, who you mentioned, and even Fran McCaffrey, who is good for maybe one or two insane blow-ups at a ref this year. So very much looking forward to him. If the Coach of the Year was based on crazy blow-ups, Fran McCaffrey would win it every single year running. None of those guys that I mentioned are going to win Coach of the Year, Taylor.
Wow.
And it's not going to be Mark Turgeon because we've already spent a few cumulative minutes shitting on him.
This is one hell of a pick here.
You know what? I'll pause there. Who am I picking?
Are you picking the former mayor of Ames, Iowa?
No, I'm not.
Oh, God damn it.
I'm going with Brad Underwood.
Wow, okay.
At Illinois. Brad Underwood has done a tremendous job of, I don't want to say resurrecting the program just yet because I think they only had 12 wins last year, but at least instilling some hope back into Champaign. That program was lost when he took it over, and he's done a good job of slowly but surely building, and he did that through recruiting this past year with Kofi Cockburn, who was a top 50 player ranked and potentially top 15 name as well.
I was going to say big name. Big name of the conference, yes.
Huge name. So a little bit of background on Brad Underwood. He was the head coach at Stephen F. Austin when they made a relatively deep run with Thomas Walkup, who, if you know Stephen F. Austin, they're called the Lumberjacks. Thomas Walkup looks exactly like a Lumberjack, so I fell in love with them. And Brad Underwood then catapulted his career to Oklahoma State. Some would say he did them dirty and then went to Illinois. So it's been a couple of years now at Illinois where people are saying, okay, Brad has slowly but surely given us a little bit more hope. And I think this year is where it comes to its apex. So they returned 4 starters from last year that carried momentum into this offseason. They were terrible in the first half of the year, but the second half of the year, they racked up some good wins. And so they returned 4 starters. And I think that is huge for a young team trying to develop and create a culture. You look at a team like Texas Tech. I'm not saying Brad Underwood's going to go to the national championship game. I'm not saying Brad Underwood is going to go to an Elite Eight. I'm not saying he's going to win 2 straight coaches of the year like our boy, why am I blank, Chris Beard. Brad Underwood, though, is building a culture, and that only happens with guys that are returning, that know what it takes in the previous year, that have been through the shitty parts. I think that's what you got with Texas Tech and a guy like Davide Moretti. He's been through the shitty parts. So they returned 4 starters, and their style of play, I think, is going to be a huge reason why they're going to win a lot more games than they did last year, and ultimately why Underwood's going to win Coach of the Year. They wreak havoc. It actually kind of reminds me of Shaka Smart's VCU teams. They create a ton of turnovers with their high-pressure style. And so I think that's going to be a nice change of pace in the Big Ten, because the Big Ten, you think of slow, grinded out defense, not necessarily pressing, jumping the lanes, turning the man over in their own half of the court. I think Brad has instilled that in Illinois, and that's going to lead to some wins. And so here are his guys. I think much like players need their coaches, the opposite is true. In order to win Coach of the Year, Brad Underwood needs some dudes. First and foremost, it starts with Ayo Dosunmu, another all-time name. Ayo Dosunmu, I mean, he could be Big Ten first team type talent and also is an NBA prospect, something that Illinois hasn't had in, I don't know, Myers Leonard, I think. They haven't had an NBA. They haven't had an NBA prospect in a while.
Not exactly the first name that comes to mind when you think of Illinois basketball, but yes.
I'm just trying to think of the last NBA prospect that they've had.
Yeah, no, you're.
So
keep going. I'm going to interrupt you. I hope you're talking about one of the other best names on this team.
I'll get to him.
Please do.
So they're back. Well, actually, maybe not, because I've already mentioned Kofi Cockburn, but table that for a second. They also have a backcourt that returns with Trent Frazier and Andres Feliz. You know how much I love guard play, baby. You know how much I love backcourt play.
Yes.
If you have, it's very rare to have both players from a backcourt return and that can actually contribute. Typically, it's one or the other that leaves, or unfortunately for you, sometimes it's two players that leave. But when you get both players from your backcourt returning alongside a Big Ten first team player in AO, that's very positive. And then I mentioned Kofi Cockburn, again, top 50 recruit. People are abuzz about him, and he's going to be able to help with their defense, which was quite literally an atrocity last year. But Cockburn's going to be able to help with their interior defense. And then to put a little bow on it, this is going to be tough, but Georgi Benishvili, I just ran through that.
Sure, let's go with that. That's close enough for me.
Benishvili, actually, he was probably their best player last year. He held his own against the likes of Ethan Happ in Wisconsin and also the likes of Kenny Goins against Michigan State. And so he's their big Georgian center. He was a freshman last year, and he was their best big as a freshman. Now he's going to have Cockburn alongside him. This is all huge for Brad Underwood. And so the reason I'm choosing him is the personnel is – it's not necessarily a bunch of experienced senior guys, but they've known Brad the entire time. They understand that they're building a culture. And I think Brad if he can do enough to get them on the bubble, he's going to win Coach of the Year. If he can do enough, maybe make some noise towards the end of the season, maybe finish within the top 5 of those Big Ten standings, I give it to Brad Underwood and the Illini that are just thirsting for anything. I mean, it's not like they have crazy expectations, but I think a lot of people are still sleeping on them. And I'm waiting for a jump year. Players, you always look in the NBA, you always look for year 2 to 3, or maybe 1 to 2, a significant jump. I think Illinois is waiting for that with Brad Underwood.
I think that is a great take. I think we didn't mention it much, but I think Trent Frazier is kind of the straw that stirs that drink of that team. And if you look at it, why someone like Kofi Cockburn is so necessary, there's no one in their starting lineup that's going to be above 6'8" or 6'9". They have to wreak havoc. They have to be quick. But AO and Trent Frazier and even Tevian Jones, in a way, are quick. Their returning backcourt is speedy and they're athletic, and they are both great on the offensive end. But like you said, their defensive area is going to be
terrible last year.
It's what's going to cause their either demise or their improvement.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why someone like Kofi Cockburn is such an important person to them. And it's going to be tough also to rely on a freshman who is not an all-world recruit. He's a really good recruit. And so they're going to go as far, I guess, as Kofi Cockburn can kind of help with their defense. That being said, I think this is easily a tournament team. I'm even higher than saying they're going to be on the bubble. I mean, they even received votes in the AP Top 25 poll and coming into this year. And so I think that their offensive end, even if they just have a little improvement on defense, they're going to have 4, maybe 5 guys on the team that can average double-digit scoring this year.
But so it all comes down to showing it on the court. And I think last year there weren't as high as expectations as there are this year. They obviously didn't get a Cockburn playing for them like they do this year. But I think they were a little underwhelming last year with only 12 wins because they stumbled out of the gate. I don't think, even if they were minuscule expectations, look, Illinois is not getting Duke, Carolina, Michigan State, Kentucky type expectations.
No,
they had some expectations last year, and they were terrible first half of the year. But then they kind of figured it out, and so I'm expecting them to be a lot more prepped entering this year. and hitting the ground running, because the only way that a team like this is going to gain confidence is if they rack up wins early in the year. And if they don't do that, then I could very well see this season going sideways, and long-term seeing Brad Underwood's tenure kind of going sideways. I don't think that's going to happen. I think Underwood's an awesome coach, and I think he's one of the more under the radar type coaches. And I feel like everyone right now is looking for that next Chris Beard, right? Who can take a meddling program in a difficult conference to the promised land. And I think the first step for Illinois is getting that tournament bid. And I think if they do that, if they can get I don't think I'm as high as you on Illinois, but if they get a tournament bid, Brad Underwood absolutely deserves Coach of the Year, in my opinion.
I wouldn't disagree with that at all, but it's almost the same situation in me saying I think Painter's going to win it because he's going to win the conference. You're saying that, so if this Illinois team exceeds expectations, then Underwood should win it. So kind of similar thoughts. But I have them easily within my teams who are going to make the tournament from this conference. I don't even think that it's a bubble situation. I've got a lot of other teams on the bubble from this conference, and Illinois, I think, is going to be better than several of those teams, at least. Yeah,
I mean, I actually think you had mentioned Trent Frazier, obviously a huge component to what they're going to do this year, but AO, in my opinion, is going to be the most important player. Either him or Benishvili are going to be their two big guys that are going to have to push them forward.
So let's not forget about the name that I was referencing, and that's Kipper Nichols as well. So would have hated to get through a segment about Illinois without mentioning my man Kipper.
So do your thing, Brad Underwood. Go prove me right, because this is one of those limbs that I'm going out on. Right? If Brad Underwood ends up being Coach of the Year, I'm probably going to be playing this clip and be very obnoxious about it moving forward. Let's move on to Player of the Year. We're both in agreement. No surprise here. I'm going Cassius Winston. This is probably the one award, not just Player of the Year. I'm talking Big Ten Player of the Year that's already solidified. It's wrapped up. It's under the tree. It just needs to be delivered. And it's going to go to Cassius Winston because for everything that you mentioned, he's a Naismith Player of the Year candidate. He is easily the best point guard, which is the most important position in college hoops. He is playing for a winning team, a team that has national title aspirations. He's playing at the spotlight. Even his past accomplishments are going to help him. He's a guy that's obviously done it the right way. He's a 4-year senior. Cassius Winston, just give it to him at this point. And everyone else was playing for second place. I suppose we should have wondered who's going to be the runner up. But last year, if we want to talk stats, he averaged 19 and 8. What more do you want from a college junior point guard? And he's just going to have more help this year. The only two slight concerns of mine, and I had mentioned this a little earlier, but one, I don't want him looking forward to the tournament too much, in the sense that he just doesn't give a shit about the regular season, because if that happens, then he's not going to win Player of the Year, could potentially develop bad habits. And then you got a Michigan State versus Middle Tennessee State on your hands. And right. I mean, that is everyone in East Lansing's biggest nightmare. So that's one. But number two, he had a slight turnover problem. And again, this is me nitpicking, again, the best college point guard right now in the game. He's got a slight turnover problem that I think he needs to cut down on. And it's not necessarily for the regular season, because if he turns the ball over, let's say 5 times, they're probably still going to win. If he does that in the Final Four, they're not.
Right.
Point blank period. So those are the only things that I would say, but there's not much to unpack here. Cassius Winston will be your Big Ten Player of the Year. And then regular season champs. So you went Purdue. I went Michigan State. I'm so incredibly high on Michigan State. This should come as no surprise to you, right?
Right. Well, and it's not even a bad take. Like, yeah.
About me though. Right. About me personally.
Yeah. Of course.
If you know me, you know I love Tom Izzo. I've taken Michigan State to win this conference the past 3 years running, but I truly think that they are the best team in the country as it stands today, and that's without Josh Langford. And so they are probably going to have some battles in the first half of the year, and I think it's going to be close in the first half of the year. But then once they get Langford back, knock on wood, and everything is okay with him, he's going to complement Cassius very well. But let's not forget that they're bringing back Aaron Henry. They're bringing back Kyle Ahrens, and then another all-name team, Rocket Watts.
That's my guy. Yeah.
Pew! Rocket Watts, baby. So, those are studs right there. Those are college basketball studs. You're not going to see these names in the lottery next year.
No.
But if you want to build a perfect college basketball team, Michigan State just might have it. And then, of course, you have Tom Izzo. So they went to the Final Four last year without Langford. They return a lot of their players. I don't think Joey Hauser is going to be able to play. He was denied. Michigan State has tried for a third time to get him eligible because they were probably seeing all these arbitrary decisions like, well, fuck it, let's try one more time. But outside of that, they just have – they're stacked. They're stacked,
Yeah.
and
No,
they're loaded at the best place, best position, excuse me, in the country.
I guess you could say that maybe they're not that big.
Who they lose? They lose Derek Nix and Kenny Goins. Not
Nick
Derek
Wa-
Nix. Nick Ward.
Nick Ward. Yeah, and I mean, if they're really not going to be starting a true center. Not that you need a true center in any level of basketball nowadays, but Xavier Tillman is probably going to be their tallest player that's in the rotation, and he's 6'8". So maybe you could see a team like Purdue, that's a big team, maybe out rebound them one day and get a W, or maybe a team in the tournament. But once it gets to the tournament, I'm not so concerned about not being that big. It's just that kind of day-to-day grind of needing to be. Sometimes you just need to be bigger. It's the middle of February. It's cold. You're on your third game in 9 days, and sometimes you just need to be bigger to just outlast a team to win another game. In the tournament, it's guards. It's just guards. There's no other way to put it. And
100%.
And they've got an abundance of them who are good.
Yeah. And so you talked about schedule, which is huge in predicting who's going to win a conference tournament, or excuse me, a conference regular season championship. I don't think that they'll lose to a Maryland. I don't think that they will lose to, let's say, an Ohio State. I don't think that's going to happen. Actually, they started a losing streak for Ohio State last year, I believe.
That's true.
So I think they're going to have 2 losses in the Big Ten. That actually might be a little bit much too. I think they're going to have 1 loss in the Big Ten. They'll have 1 loss in the Big Ten, and it's going to come to a team that's not ranked. They're gonna get upset, and that actually may be where your Purdue Boilermakers come in. But Michigan State will take care of business, I think, wire to wire, for the most part. I think they're going to trip up once in conference play. They're not going to. They might drop the first game of the season like they always do, but entering March, entering the NCAA tournament, they are going to be a 1 seed, and it's just a matter of are they going to be an overall number 1, or are they going to be like the second number 1? I think they are that good, and I do think that the disparity between them and the next team, Kansas, is somewhat noticeable. I am all in on Michigan State this year.
No, I mean, like I said, the best team in this conference is Michigan State. That goes almost without saying. I just think that sometimes we get a team that maybe just drops the tiebreaker, and that's why they lose the regular season. That doesn't necessarily mean that. Doesn't even necessarily mean Purdue's a top 4 seed, even, because Purdue will probably drop a game or 2 in the non-con. So I 100%. I mean, there's no argument to say, it's not going to be Michigan State. It's pretty cut and dry, unless you want to maybe be a contrarian, like I might be sometimes. So
it's good for conversation. So, all right, regular season champ, I got Michigan State. You have Purdue. Player of the year, we both have Cassius. And coach of the year, I have Brad Underwood. You have the Paint Man, Matt Painter.
So, it's really outside of Cassius Winston and Michigan State, we really haven't talked a lot about what is probably the biggest story in this conference coming into this year, and that's Juwan Howard, now being the coach of Michigan. Right. So I see Michigan as a tournament team this year, but I'm not as high on Michigan as many others are. They received a vote in the AP Top 25 poll, But I don't, especially since Franz Ferdinand Wagner got hurt, I just don't see them as an overwhelmingly obvious tournament team, although it seems like a lot of people do think and they are, simply because of last year they were, a great team under Beeline. I'm maybe not as high on Michigan as a lot of other people in the country. Do you have any overwhelming thoughts on Michigan?
Can I be honest with you? I didn't know that there were that many people, quote unquote, high on Michigan. I'm not. I actually don't think
No,
that they
I'm
make
not.
the tournament.
I'm like fringe tournament team.
That
them.
Franz Wagner injury was a huge blow to them. He's
Yeah.
their best player,
Right.
probably, right? And so I think there's going to be some growing pains with not only Juwan Howard as a coach, but also the transition of one of their best, probably their best coach in school history. No,
right. I think Xavier Simpson's their best player, but that's right. Sure, whatever. So
that goddamn hook shot, I hate that hook shot so much.
I'm just not as high on them as other people are, and it's almost just because of the transitional nature of having a long time stud head coach leave, and then trying to get your players in there as Juwan Howard, and Juwan Howard is completely just going to be finding his way in how to, be the head coach of a major basketball program. So I only have them as I have 9 teams from this conference making the tournament, which is going to be easily the most.
More than last year. Holy shit.
Yeah. But I just see, if you look at the other previews we did, I have one less person from the Big 12 than I think other predictions have making the tournament. I also have one less from the ACC, as most people would predict to make the tournament. So that those extra teams have to come from somewhere. And I think that's here. And you told me that you don't like this team. But I think Minnesota is the sleeper team in this conference to make the tournament. Not to do anything, but to make
still, I think they're going to finish dead last in the conference.
I think Northwestern is going to finish dead last.
Okay, maybe North. Okay,
and Rutgers, right?
Dude, I think Minnesota's terrible.
I mean, is Rutgers better than even Nebraska? I don't know. That's the problem. You got a team like Penn State, right? Penn State is maybe the third worst team in the conference, but they might have a guy who's legitimate, like all first team type of guy. So he might even be able to lead a team to enough non-con wins. This is going to be a classic conference that has like a 7-9 team or whatever, 8-10 team, maybe 2 of them that make the tournament.
Good enough resume.
Right. And so that's what I'm getting at here is it's kind of like the same exact scenario that happened with the ACC when they got 43 teams in a couple of years ago. All these teams are good enough to win the vast majority of their non-conference games, at least outside of like Northwestern and Rutgers, in my opinion. So, and maybe Nebraska. Nebraska is not the least talented team around. And, they got Fred Hoiberg, who knows some shit. So, yeah, I think this team, when I looked at the Big 12 and the ACC, I was trying to find reasons to get more than the average predicted amount of teams into the tournament. This, with the Big 10, I was trying to find reasons to keep teams out. And I was finding a tougher time finding reasons to keep some of these teams out of the tournament than it was for me to try to find more ACC or more Big 12 teams to get into the tournament.
I think generally speaking, that's a good take on those conferences. I just think Minnesota is not good. I don't think Richard Pitino is a good coach, with the exception of that 1 year where they were kind of a supernova, and I think he ended up as a 5 seed. I just think that they've lost a decent amount of their players. I don't think he's built the program to the standards that Minnesota is just looking for tournament berths. You don't have to do anything in those tournaments, but when was the last time that Minnesota was there? I think the Big Ten is so fucking competitive this year. You can make the case that it is the best conference, top to bottom, as exhibited by your 9 pick team, which obviously includes Minnesota. But I don't think that they're going to be able to survive this war of attrition. And I think at some point they're just going to kind of bottom out. That's where, and you're right. Them, Rutgers, and Northwestern could very well be interchangeable.
Sure.
That's the bottom of the barrel, in my opinion.
I'm thinking Minnesota is going to be better than that. That's my not so bold prediction that they finish like 19-14 and 8-10 in conference and somehow eke into the tournament. So
week of the 20th, then we have to talk about Purdue, and we have to see where we're at on Minnesota.
See where we're at in Minnesota.
Deal?
So that's fine with me. That's fine with me. I'll take if Purdue wins, I'm going to tell you that this is just a minor prediction compared to the Purdue winning the actual conference, because I'm saying that maybe they're a fringe tournament team. But I'm also saying that because the reason that there needs to be another team in here is because I'm not high on Michigan. Those two things almost go hand in hand.
But I'll say this: I'm more confident in Matt Painter and Purdue winning the conference than I am Minnesota going to the tournament.
Oh no, me too. Like 10-1. Yeah.
Okay.
No, this is more of the, like, if I had to pick a team that I think is going to be that spot because Michigan might not make the tournament because I don't think they're that good. I think they will, but I think we're just going to get that national narrative from the guys at ESPN and CBS and everything that this is the best conference. This is the best conference. They need the most teams. They need the most teams. Oh, this whatever. And I think that's going to eke into them getting more tournament selections. We talked about the silent assassin Greg Gard and the school I hate almost as any other team in the country, Wisconsin. We've heard from several Wisconsin people that we know that Greg Gard was actually the coach of those Bo Ryan teams, or at least he was more of the guy that made those teams go. I think he has a good year this year, and not like top 3 in the conference, but they are just going to be a continually consistent program. And I mean, think about this roster real quick of teams who are still, or players who are still on Wisconsin. You've got Fritzl, still there. Brad Davison, still there.
They all look like the villains in like ski movies.
Right. Yeah. Trice, still there. All these guys are still there.
Ethan Happ gone, though. That's all that matters.
Yeah, right. But what I'm saying is it's kind of the same way. They're almost going to be like, in my opinion, the Purdue light this year in the conference, where it's a lot of continuity. You got a good coach with a lot of continual players that are there that aren't stars. They don't have a high-end talent this year on that roster. And so Wisconsin's still going to be there. I think they're going to be more like the 6th, 7th team in the conference type of deal, because I am high on the Illini like you are. And then I think they're going to finish better in the conference than Michigan, actually. I think Iowa is going to be there too, and they're just going to be the same, like, efficient Iowa team.
Yeah.
With a bunch of white farm dudes like they always are.
We're not expecting much from Iowa.
No, but I do think they're going to make the tournament.
Not more than what we typically expect from Iowa basketball. Right.
They got a Wieskamp there. They always have like a Wieskamp style name on that team.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think Iowa's going to make the tournament. But I do think even if it's not Minnesota, I think one of the Minnesota, Penn State, Nebraska, one of those teams is gonna be better. Obviously, just by mathematics alone. If we're not high on Michigan, one of those other lower tier teams has to then win some of those games. And so it might be Penn State because of Lamar Stevens. It might be Nebraska because of Fred Hoiberg. I don't know, but I'm going to pick Minnesota out of that group, even though you think you're really, really lower than that group. Yeah. But if we don't think Michigan's as good, one of those other teams has to pick up the slack a little bit. So
sure. And I mean, I may not be as high on the conference as you, though. That's the thing. Like, I don't know if I'm 100% going with 9-8 teams. So I think it's the Big Ten is easily the most intriguing in my eyes out of the conferences that we've previewed.
Agreed.
And we got the Big East and the Pac-12 next, but the Big Ten, the names, the recruits, the players, right? I mean, you go from Tom Izzo to what's Brad Underwood going to be doing, to what's Juwan Howard going to be doing, to some of the players that we've been talking about as well. There's a lot going on. And I'm excited to see this conference, how it plays out. And you know what's funny? We mentioned them a little bit, very, very small amount. But Ohio State is lurking in the weeds, man.
They really are. Yeah, no,
if you can lurk in the weeds at 18,
yeah.
If you can, with a great coach and Chris Holtmann
and studs.
And Wesson, I mean, all Caleb Wesson has to do is just stop fouling out. The guy fouls out like with 2 minutes left in the first half somehow. But Wesson, and then also Luther Muhammad, his name has not come up. Luther Muhammad, outside of Cassius Winston, if we're talking about who's going to get second for second place, Big Ten Player of the Year, I could see Luther Muhammad getting that. And they also have a guy that we've seen play who transferred into Ohio State, Justice Sewing. Justice Sewing came over from Cal. Now, being the best player on Cal is like, I don't know the exact analogy. What is it? Tallest dwarf amongst midgets, some shit like that. I don't know. That's basically what it is, because Cal basketball is horrendous. But Justice Sewing transferred in. And so we're not – don't be surprised about what Ohio State does, is all I'm saying.
You know, it is an interesting tidbit here with the Big Ten, same as the Big 12. No 5-star recruits in this conference either, according to Too Far. So you've got, think of all the big schools in the Big 10 and the Big 12, and no 5-star recruits between, what is that, 22 schools that are decently major, that take up the whole entire middle of the country. So pretty crazy to think where all this new talent is being funneled. But it is classic Big Ten basketball to just have a bunch of senior and junior studs all around the conference. And that really is what we see here. And it's really why Michigan State is the best team in the conference, and why I think Purdue is going to be the conference winner, and why Ohio State is just sitting there lurking, and why Maryland is ranked as highly as they are, is they're all led by like junior and seniors. And that's outside of anything else or any other conference. I can count on the Big Ten to have old stud basketball players.
Players that you want to go where everyone knows your name, right? That's what Cheers says. If you want to do that, if you want to go to a conference where you know everyone else's name, go to the Big Ten, because we've seen these guys basically grow up in front of our eyes every single year.
100%.
So let's go ahead and get into our starting 5 of favorite players from the Big Ten. But before we do that, a quick message from the Barn Burner Podcast Network. All right, Big Ten starting 5. Taylor, kick us off.
So my picks are almost in line with what I just said, is that you get a lot of older players in this conference. And so it's interesting. You look at like the best players to ever play in this conference, and rarely do you find a one and done or two and done type of guy as a part of that. Even so, interestingly enough, I actually have one on the list, but it's always a bunch of old dudes who are just out here playing old man basketball in the snow. And that's part of the charm of the Big Ten. So one of those guys that didn't stay all 4 years that I'm going to pick here is someone that we previously referenced, and that is Biggie, Caleb Swanigan. I just loved Caleb Swanigan in college. I loved his story. I really loved that Purdue team. I'm the biggest Purdue fan in the whole country.
Yeah, apparently
right
so.
now.
Jeez.
I loved Biggie. I loved him coming into college as a recruit. I loved that what did they go to the Elite Eight? Did they go to the Elite Eight that year?
I don't think so.
When did they go to the Sweet 16 that year?
I think last year was the furthest they've been.
Yeah,
you're right.
You're right. I was a big Biggie fan. So we're going to start with my boy Caleb Swanigan there at Purdue. I know you love Caleb Swanigan as well.
Love Caleb Swanigan. I'm glad you referenced his story. His story truly is incredible.
Yeah, I mean did we figure out where he was in the NBA? I can't remember where he's in the NBA.
I think he's in the G League. Last I checked,
he
was on the Blazers. But Swanigan was awesome. He had that old school style of play down low. He would body some of the Big Ten.
100%.
Yeah, I mean he had those black shoes on with the white high socks. I loved it. Loved Caleb Swanigan.
So secondarily, I don't really care about this guy other than one particular moment that he had in college. And that's Christian Watford with Indiana.
Wow.
Who provided one of my very favorite moments of a team that outside of one that I really care for. I don't even really like Indiana, honestly.
We've referenced that moment numerous times on this program.
Just a couple episodes ago, yeah. Christian Watford hit the game-winning 3 against Kentucky, just kind of like push Indiana back into the national spotlight. One of the coolest scenes I've ever seen in college basketball was Christian Watford's big 3 against Kentucky. Wasn't he? Was Zeller on that team? right?
No, he wasn't. Actually, no, he was.
Yeah, right.
He was
Okay.
on that team. I think he was on the floor going to celebrate with them.
And then was Yogi Ferrell on that team too? Was that his
I
freshman?
think
No,
Farrell
it was
came
his
after that.
pre Yogi. Yeah.
I think
So
Depot might have been on that team.
could have been. Could have been. Yeah. Could have been. It would be
Or
right.
that?
In that time.
No, that actually might have been a year later. Let me check that.
Yeah. Why don't you look that up while I talk about my third guy on this list? My third guy on this list is one of the most athletic basketball players I've ever seen play in this great sport, and that is Shannon Brown at Michigan State. Just an absolute freak athlete. And of any school on this list, I could have probably picked the most players from Michigan State. I, like you, always enjoy Michigan State. There's never been a Michigan State team that I didn't enjoy. I even went so far back to maybe pick like a Zach Randolph or Mateen Cleaves, one of those guys. But I went with Shannon Brown just because he's an absolute jump out of the gym, athletic freak. And in college, great headband game. And as we've listened before, I really care about a strong headband game in college. So going with Shannon Brown as an athletic freak on that Michigan State team.
Cody Zeller was on that team, by the way.
Perfect.
Farrell was not.
Okay, got you. So this is where let's get a little interesting, Subi. Let's dive deep into the annals of recent Big Ten history. Do you have anyone from Nebraska on your list?
Absolutely not. No.
So, which means that you've overlooked 2014 Big Ten leading scorer Karen Petaway from Nebraska.
I remember Petaway.
Great hair. And that Nebraska team with Tim Miles as the coach almost looked like they were building something there.
Man, Tim Miles owes like the last 3 years of his coaching tenure to fucking Petaway.
He does. And that's why he was an all Big Ten first teamer. I don't even know what he's doing now. He's playing for nobody pretty much. But for some reason, I think you just latch on to people. And I whatever, Nebraska got a big win that year, and I just latched on to Taryn Petaway. Score of the basketball, Taryn Petaway. And definitely a team that I took way too far in the tournament that year, only to be
They lost in the first round, didn't they?
Yes, exactly.
Nebraska ball.
Because I was like, oh man, this might be a little sneaky something here.
I think I did the same thing.
And because I loved Petaway, great hair. Also, again, strong headband game as well. And then last but certainly not least was a guy who played college basketball for at least as long as I was in college, if not longer. And that is one of the most underrated players in this school's history, and that's David Lighty. Okay. Wow. Guy was at Ohio State forever.
Yeah.
Ever.
He was.
And really,
I think like he played with Greg Oden and D'Angelo Russell.
Yeah, he did. Yeah. Right.
It just feels like he gapped, like that gap between fucking Greg Oden and D'Angelo Russell was occupied by David Lighty.
And, that pretty much, I think he actually just missed him, but only by like a year, pretty much. So I'm going with David Lighty, who was never like awesome. He was just kind of like the quintessential, like old college basketball player that you want on every team that should or should not be good, especially when you have freshmen rolling in or out. So I'm going to go with David Lighty. So we got Caleb Swanigan, Christian Watford, Shannon Brown, Taryn Petaway, David Lighty. And I will say, in terms of skill level, this team is losing to all of my other starting five teams from the other conferences we've done. This team is not only losing, they're getting their asses kicked by the other
we
teams.
Say that because the Big Ten just it doesn't seem to produce a high-flying, crazy, athletic, cool, cool. Let me take that back. There are some cool dudes in the Big Ten, but Shannon Brown is definitely your coolest.
Oh yeah, 100%.
What singer was he dating?
Oh God, I don't know.
It was someone.
Let's look.
All right. While you look that up, I'll go into my starting five. And I'll start, actually, if we're talking about cool, Melo Trimble at Maryland.
Light skin.
That is what I have in my notes. That is pretty much the only reason why I have Melo Trimble in here. Look, he was a pretty good player at Maryland. I actually think he got worse and worse as his career went on at Maryland, and he didn't really make it in the NBA whatsoever. But in a conference known for its grittiness, known for its pasty white skin, known for its disgusting weather outside, Melo Trimble was the complete antithesis of that.
Yes.
He was pretty, light-skinned, smooth, and he was like the Nick Johnson. If you know, he was the Nick Johnson of the Big Ten. And of course, what I'm hoping isn't going to happen to Anthony Cowan did happen to Melo Trimble. I think he was held back by Mark Turgeon. But Melo Trimble, strictly, honestly, and I'm very, very comfortable saying this, Melo Trimble's on my team for the looks.
Yeah. Well, Shannon Brown kind of too. He's kind of like off-brand Chris Brown. Shannon Brown was married to Monica for a number of years. And actually, they recently just got divorced because Shannon Brown knocked up his side chick, which is an absolute rookie move of any NBA player. So,
yeah. You knew those fuckboy tendencies were happening in college, though, too.
Yeah, it do be like that sometimes, as we know.
All right. So I got Melo Trimble. I'm going to now go with Jared Sullinger. Earlier in the program, you were repping the tall, skinny white guys with Jared Utoff. I had to give some love to the guys with the huge ass, and that's Jared Sullinger, man. It was mind blowing to me how this guy was a D1 athlete and then picked in the first round of the NBA draft. Incredible, but he was a fantastic rebounder. I didn't know how he had the stamina to get up and down the court, but Jared Sullinger, for being such a wide, nougat-filled body, was a ball player, man.
Nougat-filled,
yes.
Kind of like DeJuan Blair, really.
Oh, he was bigger than DeJuan Blair, man.
But I mean,
he
not
wider.
but just that same kind of like a big man that is so college. Somehow both of them made it in the NBA for a little bit, but. Yeah, I just thick
as molasses, dude. Like you couldn't
in January. Yes.
Yeah. You couldn't slide a credit card under his feet when he jumped, but he somehow led the league in rebounds or whatever. But Jared Sullinger, I got to show love for the big guys. I mirrored my game after him. Maybe it was around the same time because I think he's 2 years younger than me. But the little back down. Right, the small little shot.
That's the funniest thing I've ever heard on this podcast is you mirrored your game after a guy 2 years younger than you.
Yeah, I mean we were in college at the same time. Maybe I was going to the pickup courts trying to be Jared Sullinger. Like I said, man, Jared Sullinger, a first round pick at number 21 overall. Of course, the Celtics took him like idiots. Stuff.
I've always mirrored my game from Zion Williamson. I know he's 10 years younger than me, but
all right. So my next guy, this is my boy. This might be recency bias, but I'm going Ryan Klein. Mm-hmm. Ryan Klein, an absolute sharpshooter, and is public enemy number one, maybe behind Jeremy Pruitt in Knoxville. He's number two because he completely killed Tennessee in that Sweet 16 game. He was white hot. Ryan Klein, one of my favorite shooters, and I swear Purdue always seems to get these type of shooters. It's Klein, it's Dakota Mathias, it's Robbie Hummel, maybe even if you want to go back further, who was able to do more than just shoot. But Ryan Klein, for his shooting ability, for his epic tournament performance last year, but also there's this picture. It's like it's Purdue gathered around like in their huddle, and they're putting their arms up to break for the end of practice. And it's an aerial photo, and everyone's focused in on the middle. I think Painter's talking, except for Ryan Klein. Ryan Klein's looking up at this little bird in the sky, flashes the most shit-eating grin you'll ever see. And this was about 3 years ago when he was a nobody. And I was like, who is this guy? I'm intrigued by this guy. 3 years later, he's a legend in West Lafayette. So Ryan Klein. Next guy I'm going to go with another small white shooter, and he was actually a teammate of your boy Christian Wofford. That's Jordan Hulls.
Wow.
Yes. So Jordan Hulls, another 3-point specialist, but he was like a little bowling ball, dude. He was maybe 6 feet, yoked though, and all he did was shoot. He reminded me a ton of Lee Humphrey at Florida. And the reason I say that is because small white, can shoot, but also was overshadowed by 2 other lottery picks, essentially. And that was, so for Florida, it was Joakim Noah and Al Horford. And obviously there was Corey Brewer. You can throw him in the mix.
Yeah, sure.
That was Lee Humphrey's comparison, but Jordan Hulls had Victor Oladipo and Cody Zeller. Now, Victor Oladipo very well deserves to go, I think, number 2 overall. Leave it to Michael Jordan to take Cody Zeller, who he was like obsessed with. But that's neither here nor there. Jordan Hulls reminded me a lot of Lee Humphrey with the talent that surrounded him. And it's weird because the sport is better when Indiana is good. And in the past decade or so, they've had 1 or 2 actually good teams, and he was on one of them. So love to Jordan Hulls. And then finally, I'm going to round it out with one of my all-time favorite college basketball players, Delvon Rowe from Michigan State.
That's the winner of this list. Is that?
I don't know.
Right there.
I love Shannon. I think it's just Michigan State guys. Shannon Brown, Delvon Rowe.
Yeah, I could have made this entire list for Michigan State guys
for sure. Delvon Rowe, though, is such an easy guy to root for, man. He was the only freshman to start in that national title game against Carolina. Can you imagine being, first of all, on that Michigan State team going up against Hansborough and like Raymond Felton? Was Felton on that team or was that before?
Or was that Ty Lawson on that?
That was Ty Lawson. Thank you.
Yeah.
Ty Lawson, just looking across and seeing that Carolina team that went wire to wire all year.
And that Carolina team was scoring like 95 points a game.
Danny Green was on that team. Shit, how did we forget about him? The only thing was that it was in Detroit, so I guess you kind of have a home court advantage, but it didn't matter. But Delvon Rowe was the only freshman starting on that team. And here's a crazy stat. I don't like pulling out stats, but when I was doing a bit of research on Rowe, I had no idea about this nugget. He had an offensive rebounding percentage. And again, this is all in conference play, so Big Ten conference play. Had an offensive rebounding percentage of 14, defensive rebounding percentage of 22, and shot 58% from the field. The only other guy to do that in conference play was Kevin Love.
And efficiency.
Not bad company to be with, right?
Efficiency.
Kevin Love is a potential Hall of Famer, household name. A lot of people forget how impactful and necessary Delvon Rowe was to that Michigan State team that made a run to the championship game. Now, unfortunately, again, this kind of goes hand in hand with being such an easy guy to root for. He was dealt a shitty hand. His career ended due to degenerative knee pain, but bounced back, and he's now an actor with a recurring role on a BET program called Games People Play. So I may have to check that out. Shout out to Delvon Rowe, man. He is one of my all-time favorite college basketball players. And surrounding him in the Big Ten, I got Melo Trimble, too pretty to leave off my roster. Jared Sullinger, ass too fat to leave off my roster. Ryan Klein and Jordan Hulls, my 3-point specialists, my Big Ten team.
Your roster is 100% beating my team.
I don't know, dude. My team's not very good either.
I don't know how Jordan Hulls is guarding like Shannon Brown, but yeah, I don't know.
He's not.
Yeah.
Quick honorable mention also. I feel like the past 2 times I've just really wanted to get these off my chest, but going along with the Illini theme, Dimitri McCamey, no real reason. He just always used to pound the rock. Like when he dribbled, he would just beat the living hell out of the ball. D Brown, I know he killed us, but D Brown was so cool.
Mm-hmm.
And then Manny Harris.
I had a big consideration for Manny Harris. I really liked Manny Harris a lot at Michigan.
There's a lot of down years prior to Beeline and maybe even in Beeline's early tenure at Michigan. And Manny Harris was the best player on those teams, whose real name, by the way, and I love when we expose real names, Corporale Ladorable Harris.
Ladorable?
Look it up on Wikipedia.
Wow.
That's his name.
Wow. You know what? I was looking through the list of players and I was, I thought Manny Harris. Yeah. Even just Manny's a cool enough name. Manny Fresh, Manny Subramanian, for example. Now, I didn't even hit the Wikipedia, and if I would have, I think I would have picked Manny Ladorable for this, just simply from that alone.
It's incredible. Truly fantastic. All right, let's finish it up with hugs. T, who are we giving it out to?
This one's a recent and it's almost an obvious hug, but we're going to stay here in the Big Ten with Michigan State. Tom Izzo's son, Steven Izzo, scored his first points of his collegiate career in an exhibition 2 nights ago. Was that last night or 2 nights ago?
Last night, I believe.
Yeah, last night, hitting some free throws there in their exhibition game. Tom Izzo has a pretty funny reaction to it on the sideline. Kind of just a wry smile, so to speak, of watching his son score his first collegiate points. So hug to the Izzos, father and son, coach and player. Steven Izzo getting his first points as a college basketball player.
Cold world out there. Tom Izzo was just stone cold chilling on the the table there.
Yeah.
Didn't even like give a clap or anything like that.
Kind of just a little smirk. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Maybe like, all right, at least now my kid has some points here. Good for him.
Now he's probably like, good. I don't have to like feel bad for not inserting him into like a big game this year.
Yeah. Yeah. No. You already got yours.
Because there are those walk-ons that just keep missing every single time in garbage time, and you just want to get them a bucket, and all of a sudden it's like senior night against whoever, and you're like, God damn it. This guy never scored this year. Right? Come on.
I know you want to get on the board, but just please, take the foul and then get the hell out.
But we're 1 game behind Purdue, and we need to win this last game.
Wow. Wow. I cannot wait for young Izzo to ruin the Boilermakers' hearts this year. Watch that. He's got to finish with 5 points on the year. 3 of them are going to come against Matt Painter's squad.
Great. Because everybody else got hurt.
I'm going to give my hug to a player in the exact same predicament as Steve Izzo. Is it Steve Izzo, right?
Steven
Izzo.
I don't know him well enough to call him Steve. I don't know. But
Pantelis Zidius, the point guard bench warmer, really, for DePaul University. Now, Pantelis, you may have seen him in a lot of clips. He is a crazy looking dude, but he's a lot of fun. He's got rec specs. He's got some wild hair, always pumping his team up at the end of the bench, doing some crazy dances. He actually got his first collegiate points yesterday from the free throw line as well here in Chicago. So hug for Pantelis. I'm looking forward to some original and new celebrations that he has in store for us. If you remember a couple episodes ago, we discussed that as an incoming freshman, which he's not, he's been on the team for a little bit now, but as an incoming freshman, you want to be able to at least contribute to a bench celebration. That was one of the tips that I had for incoming freshmen. Pantelis is a scholar at it. He has his master's degree in bench cellies. So be on the lookout for Pantelis, because there's pretty much nothing else to look forward to with regards to DePaul basketball.
He might have the best hair in college basketball. Might have the best look in college basketball.
He's like a nerdier Nico Mannion.
Nerdy Nico Mannion.
Nico.
Sure. I'll roll with that. I'm fine with that. Nerdy Nico Mannion out there at DePaul.
Hug for Izzo, hug for Pantelis. We will catch you next time. We are going to be previewing the Big East, and we got a little surprise for you.
Debate ahead.
I'm just going to ruin it. It's the crier, baby. We got the crier. Talk soon.